Here's my note card. All right. 81 Kazmierczak, I'm going to talk to y'all about veteran suicide. So for the past 20 to 30 years, the Veterans Affairs has noticed an increase in veteran suicide. So we're going to talk about the Veteran Crisis Line and the technology they use in order to combat the amount of suicides of veterans. So M. Chalibi talks about a study that was done by the Veteran Affairs from 1979 to 2014, and what they did is they did a demographic of how many veterans were in America currently at that time. So one of the things we're going to show is a graph, and what they found was that 22 million veterans were currently alive in the United States for 2019, and that they only made up 7.3% of the U.S. population. So that's a very small fraction, right? That includes people who have been retired, active duty, everything, all right? 22 million. So out of that 22 million, you would wonder, well, why is veteran suicide such a big issue, right? So the VA did another study, and from based off of the numbers that they found from 1979 to 2014, with a 50% higher chance veterans had of taking their own lives compared to the civilian population. So if we look at this graph right here, so if 10 non-veterans took their lives during that time, 20 veterans took their lives during that time. So that's a huge number, especially when the veteran population is only 7.3% compared to the overall percentage of Americans that are living in America right now. Okay, so looking at that number, it looks very, very wrong, right? Okay. All right, so going further down, understanding what the percentage is now. So in 2014, the Department of Veteran Affairs looked at what the numbers are now compared to when they did the survey from 1979 to 2014. And the 2014 to 2018 survey showed that the veteran suicide rate was actually 22%. So it actually decreased. And so you have to think, well, what caused the decrease? Well, what was established was the Veteran Crisis Line. Okay, the Veteran Crisis Line was established in the early 2007s. And so with that being established, there was an outlet for veterans to seek help. So even with that, we saw a decrease in how many veterans took their lives. So for 19% was males who were veterans who took their lives, whereas females were 2.5%. In regards to who these folks are taking their lives, the survey also showed that overall the western region of the United States was the main source or a huge influx of where the suicides were coming from. And what that data also showed was in that western region, veterans who were 50 or older were the ones taking their lives, whereas the younger generation was 35% and less, okay? With that being said, that leads you to believe, well, if it's the older generation and the western region, what states could possibly be one of the main areas for veteran suicide and why? So we look at Washington, which is where we're stationed during this time, and the Washington veteran suicide rate was actually astronomically higher than the Washington non-veteran rate, along with the region rate, almost double. Okay, so if we look at this, the orange line talks about the veteran rate for Washington, and then the blue line talks about the Washington state for civilians. Okay, and as you can see, that's double. The region one is a lot lower, and it still shows that the veteran suicide rate in Washington is double. Now, when compared to the red line, which is the veteran suicide rate for the national average, we're just barely below that. Okay, so that's actually a really scary number, and it's broken down by age, and it shows 18 to 34, 35 to 54, 55 to 74, and then you're 75 and plus. And those numbers are really high, which is kind of alarming, right? So we have to wonder, what's causing this? Is it geographical? Is it the weather? Is it, just the fact that it's small communities? And the majority of these areas are saturated with military. Okay, so trying to figure out and deduce what the major cause is really hard for the VA to figure out. All right, so something personal that I would like to share is back in 2018, just before Thanksgiving, being stationed in Washington, I have a lot of mentors here, and my chief took his life. Okay, he was well liked. He was about to retire, nearly 20 years of active duty service. He was getting close to that threshold of age 50. He was 42 years old. Had a family, had kids, had a master's degree. So he fell into the statistics for Washington. Okay, and so one of the things that I find is important is the Veteran Crisis Line. If he had used that, I don't know if he had or not, but it's a source that's out there that is actually helping save lives. So even though he became a statistic, getting this information out there will hopefully lower the chances of anybody else being a statistic. So since the inception of the VCL, they have taken 3.8 million phone calls. They've taken 112,000 emergency service calls. They've also taken 440,000 chat services and close to 108,000 text messages. For fiscal year 18, the numbers are pretty close. So for fiscal year 18, the number for phone calls actually dropped 2%. But we saw an increase in text services and emergency services being used, and the chat services stayed the same. So overall, since its inception, it actually hasn't changed all that much, and it's staying the same. And so far, roughly, if you think about it, over 4 million lives have been saved using this. So why is it important? Without the Veteran Crisis Line, those lives may not have been saved. 4 million people is a lot, and that's not even including fiscal year 19. Okay, so knowing that information is crucial in order to save lives, not just veterans, but also possibly loved ones and stuff like that. So if you know anybody who's struggling with inner demons or an invisible battle that they don't seem to be able to overcome, please give them the number 1-800-273-8255. Press 1, or they can use the text message, which is 838255, and they can seek the help they need and possibly save a life. Currently, the average is 20 veterans take their lives each day. A couple years ago, it was 22 lives a day, but one life is one too many. So I hope you all enjoyed this speech, and that's all I have for you today. Thank you.